Notices of motion. Councillors, I'll ask you to please start by stating the motion and then we'll turn to speaking in favour. It's later. Notice of motion 4615, public toilets. Councillor Bolton.
Okay, that's me. The council reviews the public toilet strategy before the end of 2015 with a view to including in the 5-year plan A, extra public toilets in the vicinity of the Coburg Mall, B, a public toilet outside the Faulkner Library, 2, further that the cleaning frequency of the XLUs, particularly in the Coburg Mall, be reviewed and increased. And I'd like to add a third point after hearing the residents' comments earlier today. Point 3, to investigate immediate temporary solutions to the lack of public toilets in the vicinity of the Coburg Mall.
Okay, is there a seconder to Councillor Bolton's motion? Councillor Gillies. Councillor Bolton.
So first I'd like to read the a little paragraph within the Moreland Public Toilet Strategy, which says, it is not the intention of council to provide public toilet access in every location in the municipality, rather to locate them in destinations of high activity. This will provide public toilet access where needed without placing undue pressure on streetscapes and council resources. Now, the two areas where I'm advocating there's a need for more public toilets are two areas where there is a high level of activity: the Coburg Mall and the Faulkner Library, the vicinity of the Faulkner Library. I think the reason why council has perceived that there's no crisis in this regard is because people are frankly a bit embarrassed to talk about dunnies, public dunnies. And I gather that in recent years there's been a bit of a general move of governments and local councils away from providing public toilets. But this was a big campaign at one stage because women were denied public toilets at one point in the 1800s, and it was a women's Christian temperance union that waged a big campaign for public toilets for women to be provided. But we're back to the same sort of issue now. I think in the Coburg Mall, it was pointed out by the residents. There are a number of toilets that existed. They were taken away and replaced by just simply 2, which then leads to a crisis in the Coburg Library of people not being able to get in to use those toilets. The Faulkner Library situation is there is no public toilet in the Faulkner Library, which I'm amazed you can have a public building like that without a public toilet, given the range of activities that happen in the library. But also, in addition to that, just outside the library, there's a playground, there's a skate park, which is highly utilised, and there's no public toilet in the whole vicinity. Sometimes you can plea with the Faulkner Leisure Centre and they'll let you in, but that's not all the time, and it's not open all the time. You're meant to pay to use the leisure centre. I'm not sure what the ratio is of in state government health acts, etc., of public toilets to the number of people. But certainly in Coburg, the car parks during the daytime, which used to be, sparsely parked, are now thriving in the daytime. So it indicates there's an increased usage of the Coburg Activity Centre, the Coburg Shopping Centre, because there are so many more developments in the area, which surely means that we need to increase the infrastructure that's provided. And I really would dispute the idea that the toilet block at the back of Coles was worse than the XLUs, and especially when small children, parents with small children who like to touch everything, when they are in such a filthy condition. I don't ever remember seeing that old toilet block in the state that the current toilets in Coburg are in. So that's it.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Gillies, you should.
No, I'm fine.
No. A speaker against Councillor Bolton's motion.
Questions?
Sure. Question, Councillor Ratnam.
So just a couple of questions. Just one, we've received some advice since a notice of motion went in about a previous motion with the budget papers being adopted relating to point A, 1A, I believe. So can we just get clarification that the resolution with the budget papers actually satisfies 1A? Do we need to? Have we got a previous motion in the books that
No,
says
it
exactly the
doesn't.
same thing?
No.
So there's a point of difference there. So can I just ask clarification of that?
I thought there was.
I'll direct it to the Director for City Infrastructure.
Through the Mayor, the resolution from the 22nd of June 2015 says to review the capital works program for the public toilets prior to the 16-17 budget being adopted. It doesn't specifically mention Coburg and Fawkner in the resolution. It talks about the whole municipality.
Okay.
Which includes Coburg and Fawkner. So, Councillor Ratt.
Okay, so just on that point, I just would like to know whether the public toilet in Coburg Mall and the Fawkner Library is part of the public toilet strategy and where in the next 5 to 10
We've
year
actually just been trying to look that up because I had the same question and we're just trying to find it. My understanding was that Fawkner was 2017,
Okay.
But I could be wrong.
Okay, so we might come out, if this is resolved, we might come out with it,
Is it in
with them already being in the plan, just
Oh,
reiterating
Fawkner
the plan.
Library.
Sydney Smith. So it's in the list.
Fawkner Library was scheduled for investigation in 2012 to 13, and this states that it was pushed back. So my understanding is it is certainly in the five-year plan
okay.
already, but I can't give you an exact year.
Coburg isn't in the 5-year plan, you don't think?
Not to my knowledge, no, and not to the director.
And so what Councillor Bolton's motion is asking for is for both of those to be, if they're not in the plan already, to be considered within the 5-year plan, right? So it might
I
be
can
redundant, but
confirm
it's
with
just redundant.
absolute certainty that Fawkner Library is in the five-year plan.
Okay, so it's just Coburg that we have to investigate. And just another further question, do we do any public surveying as part of, investigating the feasibility of sites? I know that we have in the past, but just as a matter of course, I'm just wondering whether, given the questions previously, whether we should think about that, given, the urgency and need as well, and the use of the XLUs, which seems to be the matter of contention in terms of how we actually implement the strategy. So do we do survey work and we plan to do it if we went
Certainly,
with
to the
this?
CEO.
Just through the Mayor, so as part of the strategy that I think was adopted around 2012, there was a survey done originally at that point that's in the actual strategy itself. So there's some survey material that was about looking at the whole city and where the preferences were.
Yep.
When it's a site-by-site, when it comes to actually implementing these, and we can add some detail if you'd like, but when it's site-by-site, then there's project-specific consultation that happens really with the people around the actual project. But if you're looking at where they should be, that was really asked at the point when the strategy was pulled together.
Right, okay.
Thank you. Any further questions in relation to this item? Councillor
I have a
Kavanagh.
question that I'd like to make a say. Can I ask about, am I correct that when council's building new buildings, they have to be disciplinarily compliant? That is correct or not? Yeah.
Yes.
If council are improving old buildings or reactivating old buildings, do they have the same criteria? Because those toilets could never be disability compliant under any circumstance. Because they go down.
Yep, to the director, City Infrastructure.
Through the Mayor, in regards to renovating existing building, it depends on the degree to which you're renovating it, and that then influences whether the building surveyor requires you to upgrade the toilets or not. So it depends on the degree of renovation to that building.
Thank you.
Okay, I want to speak against,
Yes, Councillor
against the
Kavanagh.
motion. Not that I'm against, as councillors will know, I'm in support of public toilets, but I don't like having a motion that automatically presumes the outcome of the review, which I think this does by naming two specific sites. I'm happy with point 2. I'm actually happy with point 3 as well, although I must say with the ones at the back of Coburg, I won't be voting to activate those, or we can tell you now. But also, I just don't like a motion that presumes. For example, I think Sydney Road, Brunswick is very much lacking in public toilets. I also think Snell Grove, Oak Park, Cumberland Road, Pascoe Bar. I actually don't think Sydney Road, Brunswick's got any public toilets. I know I have to go in the Retreat Hotel or whatever and ask to use. Yeah, I know it does a Buckley Square in private lane, but I don't think we have any public toilets as such. I'm not sure. But anyway, so point 2 I'm happy with, but overall I don't like already presuming the outcome of the review.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Any further speakers?
Yeah, I'm going to echo.
If Councillor Tamanos, if you're going to speak against, I'll call first for a speaker in favour. Is there a speaker in favour of the motion? Yep, Councillor Ratnam.
Look, I think there have been some concerns raised about this in regards to whether it's replicating some of the work that we're already doing, but I'm satisfied that they'll cancel each other out. If one of those projects is within the 5-year plan, then fantastic. But I think in terms of if we're hearing from the community that something's becoming more urgent, then it's worth us investigating that. I'd like to see something in there as well about some public consultation about that, because if we're getting different messages, it might be a good time to look at what is needed in that vicinity. So, look, I think we do need extra investment in public toilets. Yes, there are multiple areas that need that investment as well, so we definitely don't want to take away from that. But I think I've heard a lot from around Coburg, like I've heard that over the last few years about the need, and for Brunswick in the shopping district as well. So I think it's good to review it. It's asking for a review to consider it in the next 5-year plan, and then we'd have to adopt that for it to go ahead. So I think there's a check and balance in terms of the next stages. So I'm satisfied with it.
Thank you, Councillor Ratnam. Councillor Tapinas.
Yeah, I'm actually speaking in favour as well, not opposed.
Oh.
But I did want to say some comments. There was from day one a debate about ex-saloons versus the traditional public toilets. And there were certainly pros and cons, and there were advantages to having one model in certain locations and ex-saloons in other models. So a lot of work has actually gone through in determining that, and that's why our policy actually does use a mix of both public toilets. Now, in my view, there is absolutely no excuse for them not to be clean. And this is something that we do need to raise with the contractors. It needs to be raised with whoever is responsible for that area. It's just not acceptable. And whether it's an ex-saloo or whether it is a traditional toilet, it should be clean. And I've now heard it from a number of users that they are not happy with the level of cleanliness that occurs. So I think that does need to be addressed urgently. Now, I do agree with John that when we do develop strategies and policies, we do look at the whole municipality. It is not correct process or a little bit unfair for a ward councillor particularly to say these projects in my ward are a priority above all others, because we do need to look at the municipality as a whole. And there are areas of great need. And John, Councillor Kavanagh, you are right. With the exception of one off Sydney Road, one or two off Sydney Road, there's no public toilets in the large stretch of Sydney Road, and there's absolutely zero on Lygon Street in Brunswick as well. And that is an area that is being picked up as well. So the purpose of having the strategy is to do strategic work to inform our investment. It's okay for council to say we want to spend more, and we have during our budget process, but where and how that money is spent should really be informed with a strategy, and that should come first. But nonetheless, I'm happy to support what's on the board, because it is only calling for an investigation of these matters. It is only calling for these matters to be considered in a future policy. But I do hope the more important principle of fairness and equity across the municipality is one that wins out. And having said that, may I remind councillors that as it was assessed by the budget and our officers, the next toilet on the priority list was Methven Park, and that was removed from the budget. So we need to be careful not to be making decisions that create a situation where one area of the municipality misses out because of another.
Okay. Any further debate on this item? Okay. Councillors, can I suggest that point 1 possibly be altered? Well, rather than calling for an extra review when there's already one taking place, perhaps instead it could read that as part of the current review of the public toilet strategy,
That's good.
and that just saves officers having to write 2 reviews. Is that acceptable to the mover? Okay, thank you. With that change...
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Councillor Kavanagh.
Just a governance. Am I allowed to speak against the motion and then eventually vote for it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I am?
Yes.
Okay. I haven't done that before. Just
That change has got you over the line?
I think that and Councillor Tapinos pointed
Sure.
out that it's only a
Wonderful, thank you. Councillor Bolling, you want to close the
I
debate?
would like to close the debate. My reason for particularly raising these 2 particular areas, and I'm aware that there are other areas of public toilet need, and for instance, parks, new parks being built with playgrounds but no public toilets, which in my belief, the 2 need to go together. But there's been, I have been raising this issue about the Coburg Mall for some time on council, but it's sort of generally been ignored that there's been any kind of need whatsoever. And so I felt the need to put it in the form of a motion. And I think the fact that so many signatures, and it turns out there are many people who've got all sorts of medical issues, which means that they have to really juggle when they actually visit the mall and certainly not linger and not have a coffee or whatever, because, they can't use the facilities. And I think the council is aware of the situation in the Faulkner Library, but it's an investigation, but I'd like to, heighten the awareness about the situation, the lack of public toilet access in that area, especially with lots of young people in a public building of councils without a public toilet. Like, I don't actually understand how we can even get away with building a facility like that without a public toilet, when there are all sorts of activities, reading groups for kids and all sorts of things that happen in libraries. So, yeah, I'd like to commend the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. I'll now put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Declare that carried. Now, before we go to notice of motion 4715, I'm seriously considering whether to accept this motion under section 1254C in the local laws, which states that I must not accept a motion which is outside the powers of council. In the Local Government Act, section 94A, it states that council CEO is responsible for appointing, directing, managing and dismissing council staff and for all other issues that relate to council staff. Councillor Bolton, I'm happy to give you an opportunity to address why you feel that I should accept this motion and why you feel it is within the power of council, and then I'll make a ruling.
Well, I feel that this is a special scheme, Work for the Dole, which is a policy issue. It's not hiring staff in the traditional employment context, because this is really like indentured labour. It's actually a form of indentured labour. It's not
Point of order raised by what is your point of order, Councillor Thompson?
Speaking to the motion, not representing.
Yes, you are speaking to the motion.
by speaking to the I'm not actually speaking to the motion. I'm speaking to this particular point.
I'm happy to put the motion.
About it being an operational, about this being a purely operational issue for the CEO and not the purview of council. I think because this is a form of indentured labour, or people doing work for the council who aren't being paid equivalent.
Point of order.
Yeah. Point of order. You're again speaking to the motion.
No, it was the CEO's opportunity to reject the motion. It has not been rejected.
The local laws do state, though, that I must not accept something that's outside the powers of council.
That the CEO has that.
No, that's separate. So you're talking to the section.
It was not rejected.
Councillor Thompson, I'm explaining to you the local laws. There's the opportunity.
Debate about whether we should accept it. We should accept it.
Councillor Thompson, I am the chair. The section that you are referring to is separate. It outlines notices of motion and whether the CEO should accept them or not. I'm referring to section 12 motions and the chairperson's duty, which explicitly states that any motion which is defamatory, is objectionable in language or nature, is outside the powers of council, is not relevant to the item of business on the agenda and has not been admitted as urgent business, or purports to be an amendment but is not, must not be accepted by the chairperson. So I'm saying I'm not sure that this is within the powers of council, so I'm not clear on whether I can accept this motion.
Can I speak to the powers of council?
Can I speak briefly?
Yes.
First.
No.
Well, I'll allow Councillor Ratnam first because I saw her first. Councillor Ratnam.
Just in terms of that question about whether it's in the powers of council, if that's the only grounds on which you're deciding whether to include or exclude this motion, I think the very fact that council participated in this program previously has the power to decide whether to go ahead and proceed with it in the future, as the CEO mentioned before, that they didn't have successful outcomes, so they were thinking about whether to go ahead. That suggests that it's within the power of council to decide whether to participate or not participate in the program. So I think it is within the council, because if we resolve this motion, we will then not participate in the program. That is within the power of council to determine that as an organisation, it does not want to participate in this Work for the Dole program.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Ratnam. Councillor Tapanos.
I will disagree, and perhaps we do need a resolution to admit this, but I was going to also offer as suggestions we might resolve this. But I do think that these matters are quite clear in law, and they are within the realm of the CEO, and therefore I do think that they can't be considered by council around this room, even if they are, obviously, as all our staffing matters are, staff of council, and they provide services of council. But perhaps if I can offer a suggestion, and this is where I think it really conflicts, is that it seeks to actually put a prohibition to limit the powers of a CEO within the realm that is entirely in the CEO's responsibility under the Act. So if it were to change and it were not to say council resolved to not participate in the federal government's work for the dole scheme, and it were to be changed to be made just a statement of policy, that it is council's view that the federal government's work for the dole scheme is unfair or ineffective or not working, and this be expressed publicly, that would be a different matter. That would be a matter of policy. Whereas in this motion, it specifically says council will not participate. Council will not do this in relation to staffing matters. So I think that's where we need to separate our roles from a level of government and our governance role in formulating policy and our management role, which is purely within the realm of the CEO. So if that motion were to be changed, I'd be very happy to support it, as I agree with its content, and it were to become purely a statement. But if it were a direction, a prohibition on our working and employment procedures, but I don't think it is within the realm of the council to decide that.
I'll ask the mover of the notice of motion whether she would be prepared to alter the motion to state that it is council's view that the work for the dole scheme is inappropriate or...
Well,
Cool.
well, there are two options here at this point. There's one possible option where I could accept the proposal of Councillor Tapanos and have a second point that the council resolves not to participate in the scheme, and people could vote, separate the 2 points. But
Well, only if I accepted the second point.
But I believe that this is not operational. It is not a staffing matter, unless we're planning to staff the council on short-term work for the dole, indentured labour scenarios. So I don't see this as being
Point of
staffing.
order. I'm going to, as Councillor Tapanos suggests, put it to the council. It is and I'd like it minuted that I personally hold strong reservations over whether considering this sits within the Local Government Act, but I'm happy to put to council whether we consider this or not. So all those in favour of considering this motion by Councillor Bolton, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All those against? Okay, I'll declare that resolved to consider the motion, and I'll allow Councillor Bolton to move the motion.
Okay. So my motion...
It's seconded by Councillor
My
Ratner.
motion at the moment is, as the original, unless someone amends it, council resolves not to participate in the federal government's work for the dole scheme as it is ineffective in assisting unemployed people with gaining employment and has a potential to undermine jobs in the local government sector.
Okay, and that's been seconded by Councillor Ratner. So Councillor Bolton, I'll allow you to speak to the motion.
So, firstly, I think I've put quite a bit of explanation in the background to this motion. A lot of work for the dole schemes are like jobs where you're asked to dig a hole, fill it in, dig a hole, fill it in, the same hole, they're usually make work situations. It's very rare that people gain the sort of experience that would actually help them gain work. And I actually quote in the background...
Sorry, members of the gallery, you're not permitted to video or photograph the council meeting. Please continue, Councillor Bolton.
So I quote in the background to the motion that one particular study found that a large number of job seekers actually were adversely impacted in finding work, securing work, by their participation in work for the dole schemes. And I think the reason for that is quite obvious to me, is in this day and age, especially with white-collar jobs, you have to write a huge essay about filling in job selection criteria, etc. It takes actually quite a lot of time to put in proper, serious job applications. And even a lot of blue collar jobs are like that now as well. And so, by carrying out these numbers of hours on work for the dole, it actually impedes people's ability to look for work. Besides that, if you actually do end up in a work for the dole scheme where you actually are doing useful work, then that should be remunerated just like any other worker, because it is like an indentured labour scheme. Why should one worker be paid properly and another worker gets crumbs, just get the dole? What's the sense in that? If it is a genuine job, it should be paid like a genuine job. And this does not solve the issue of unemployment. It's purely a punitive thing for unemployed people. All of these Ford workers are going to be marching out of Ford Broadmeadows next year, and they're not going to have jobs. Unemployment in Broadmeadows is well over 23%, the official figures, let alone the unofficial figures, and youth joblessness. This is not going to assist one iota in creating jobs. And even the Mickey Mouse jobs training schemes that people are pushed into through the registered training these private training bodies often don't really help people with jobs. So, I actually think this is a scheme which actually impedes people's ability to look for work. And it does undermine conditions. If people are doing a genuine job, then they should be paid properly.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Ratnam.
Thank you. And look, I fully concur with Councillor Bolton's sentiments and the nature of this motion. I don't think we're talking about work here. We're talking about a scheme. We're talking about a policy that is being dictated to other levels of government, for example, and business and community organisations to participate or not participate. I don't think it's about employment. As Councillor Bolton outlined, the research has told us that the scheme doesn't work. It was first introduced 15 years ago. It didn't work. It was taken off the table and is being reintroduced now. It doesn't have long-term employment outcomes, doesn't provide adequate training and opportunity for skill development, which is what people who are facing unemployment often want and need. So if it's not serving those purposes, the question is, what purpose does it serve? It is a punitive and unfair regime in my view, and I think it's very, very damaging on the people who are forced essentially to participate if they continue to get income support. In many ways, it's an attack on the social safety net, because it's saying, well, you can't get income support unless you work for free or do some work for free. And, it's appropriated the word work for all the wrong reasons. I think it unfairly punishes people who have perhaps fallen on hard times or having difficulty finding employment, and rather than actually supporting them to find securing and long-term employment, it's actually detracting away from that. And what it does is sort of humiliates them. I remember when it was first introduced, it was talk on Current Affair and all the news channels about people on work for the dole having to scrub bus shelters, and that's a very visible way of saying, well, if you want to get income support, you have to publicly go there and tell people that you're unemployed. And I think that's very damaging for our society, and I think it's such an attack on the system that we should be so proud of, that supports people who've fallen hard times, and I don't think council should participate in it.
Thank you, Councillor Ratner. Is there a speaker against the motion? Councillor Rob Thompson.
Unlike the councillors before me, I've had a great experience with Work for the Dole programs. My understanding of the Work for the Dole is it's hosted by not-for-profit organisations and government agencies. It's designed to develop skills that employees want and show that they're ready to start work, and it's certainly there for opportunities for unemployed to meet new people and make contacts within an employment environment, and to get involved with their local community, just some of the features of the current Work for the Dole system. My brother-in-law, who's been long-term unemployed, has had a great deal of enjoyment recently working at one of the op shop organisations where he's not taking work from anybody. He's taking, if anything, taking work or working with volunteers, sorting through donations and getting some retail experience. He's got a purpose for getting up each day and is undertaking, I think it's about 15 hours of work a week and is getting paid for it he believes he's getting paid for it in the form that he's receiving his benefits and undertaking those 15 hours. Recently, I was privileged enough to win a couple of large maintenance contracts, of which I had the opportunity to employ some 60 to 80 staff across the southwest of Victoria, of which 3 of those individuals had been long-term unemployed, of which 3 of them presented their very brief one-page CVs, and all 3 of them had indicated that they'd been actively looking for work and had undertaken some work for the dole experience, which was fantastic in my eyes. The most important component of this, and I think it's the point that is made at the very beginning, that council resolves not to participate, it's local organisations like Local Council who have fantastic OH&S pedigree, who have wonderful safe work method statements and operational procedures, who work in an environment where they're mentored and supported by existing staff and employers that mean that gentlemen, ladies who come to us with long-term unemployment are then able to be supported and shown and gifted some of the experiences that we have here at a council level. And I think it's organisations like Local Council and not-for-profit organisations that should be supporting this, because it's organisations like ours that are going to make these sort of things successful. You're absolutely right. There are probably organisations out there that are doing it incorrectly. We would not be one of those, and I certainly wouldn't want to be one of those. I would want to be making sure that long-term unemployed are coming to us, getting real skills for real long-term future, and we're supporting them like my brother-in-law.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Is there a speaker in favour?
I am going to speak in favour. My reasons differ slightly from Councillor Ratnam and even from Councillor Bolton's. In fact, from my point of view, I am going to support this because I don't see it as necessarily just a punitive thing that punishes those who are unemployed. It's actually a subsidy of businesses. That's what it is. It's a subsidy for businesses. And the reality is that if the work is there, they should be paying for it, and they should be paying for it properly. You know, our tax system has been subsidising business for far too long, many businesses, and usually not small businesses, I will say that. Usually it's big business, but the point is, at the end of the day, you know, we also rely, even in councils, on volunteers, and we shouldn't. We shouldn't, because they're not covered by work cover, and if they get injured in a workplace and they're volunteers, we can't cover them. You know, work cover does not cover them. The fact that people like to volunteer is a great thing, and it is an amazing part of society. And I've volunteered my time to do many things. But the reality is, reliance on volunteer work as well as work for the dole becomes really a reliance on slave labour to get the same jobs done and things actually done in any business, whether it be council, whether it be a small business, or whether it be big business. Many years ago, when I'd just given birth to my son, and I was I've pretty much most of my life been a single parent, but I was a single parent, and I had deferred from university, and I had absolutely no skills except I could play the piano and double bass, which didn't get me far. I actually was in one of the government schemes about placing subsidised work, and I was put into a travel agency as a receptionist, and the minute the subsidy stopped, guess what? They gave me the boot. And the reality was I wasn't too bad as a receptionist, actually. I'm a pretty good talker. But, you know, that was the reality. Yes, I gained skills. Did that give me a long-term future? No. Did I, you know, but a small business did gain from a subsidy from the government in order to employ me. At the end of the day, was it more than the single parent's pension at that time? No, it actually wasn't. So it was essentially really a work for the dole scheme. My point is this: we should be looking at ways to create more jobs. We shouldn't be making people work for the dole. I actually don't agree, though, that because I don't think any job is beneath anyone, and I have over my lifetime had to do many jobs. and I've never ever felt that any were beneath me, because I think that basically at the end of the day, anything that that you're paid for and you can put food on the table is something to be proud of. That is just my belief. But I do think that if you do a fair day's work, you should have a fair day's pay, and if the work is there, it should be paid properly. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor Gillies. Is there a speaker against?
I'll speak.
Yes, Councillor Tapanos.
Yep, I rise to speak, and in doing so, I'll also have a go at the work for the dole system, as I believe it is a system that really hasn't achieved its objectives and has probably failed in the sense, and you get that through the participation rates, you get that by looking at the amount of job seekers who are doing everything possible to avoid job for the dole. They're clearly not learning the skills and not getting the opportunities and not seeing the value in the program. So I think in that sense, it has failed. It's probably not the best pathway to actually reskilling or further study or other job pathways that could be taken and could be addressed. So since we are having this opportunity to debate as a policy position, work for the dole, I'll put my position forward as such. And I do agree with Councillor Gillies that it is effectively people who are being subsidised and taking jobs away that should be offered the proper award and conditions that they are appropriate for those positions. It is something that we always need to encourage as a council in our community, that we do want to provide the best working opportunities, the best pay for a fair day's work and the best conditions for our workforce. And we do need to be encouraging job seekers to further improve their skills, to further improve their study and improve their opportunities and experience. But I don't think Work for the Dole has worked in addressing these concerns, and it's actually probably just being used by businesses and other organisations instead of hiring people, and I think that's a real shame because, as been stated before, they don't enjoy the same working conditions and they're not covered by insurance and many other areas. So I don't think it works, and certainly the experience, and I can say this from reading the report of this council, is that there wasn't really much in it for this organisation and for the participants who actually participated in that pilot program. But nonetheless, I am speaking against the resolution because, as the previous debate, I do think this is a discussion that, or a resolution that is outside the powers of council and therefore ultra-vires to council, and I think it should be voted down. But nonetheless, I've enjoyed the debate. I've enjoyed hearing the discussions about Work for the Dole, and I think those have been heard by our staff and our CEO in the future, and I therefore don't even think that a motion like this is necessary.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. Is there a speaker in favour? No? In that case, I'll allow the mover of the motion to close the debate.
Thanks. I think Councillor Thompson's experience of your particular brother-in-law, maybe he has had a positive experience with it, but what I have witnessed is a lot of people who are unemployed or sometimes short-term or long-term unemployed do engage in these work for free training schemes or work for the dole or a range of these work for free or work for cheap kinds of schemes enthusiastically at first in the hope that this will help them get a job. And then once people have gone through a few of these schemes and realise it doesn't, in most cases, doesn't actually increase people's chances of getting a job, it just makes people cynical. I think if a long-term unemployed person presents at council and there's a job for them to do, we should be employing them on proper wages and conditions. If they're jobs to do, the money that's being given as a subsidy to businesses, as Councillor Gillies described, which is absolutely true, should be spent on creating a job, creating jobs. There are lots of jobs that need doing that aren't being funded at the moment by all levels of government. That money for Work for the Dole scheme should be used to actually create jobs for long-term unemployed. That's what's needed. And in reality, this title, Work for the Dole, is simply a way of trying to create in people's consciousness the idea that people who are unemployed are bludgers. and don't want to work. That's the whole reason for the scheme and the name of the scheme, when people do want to work. And people who, may not be chasing work at the moment, if you're in an area of high unemployment, it gets damn demoralising applying for a job when there's 500 other people applying for those jobs all the time. Like, it actually gets quite demoralising. So I don't blame people who do give up at a certain point of time. And I think, especially local government should not be using the Work for the Dole scheme, because in reality it will be replacing jobs. That's what it will be. It will be replacing permanent, secure jobs with proper paying conditions, with I call it indentured labour. And I've seen this work in the federal public service. I was federal public servant for a little time, and this particular area I was in employed lots of people on these federal government pay employers to employ people. It was all temporary work. People would work their guts out, but there'd be no job at the end of it. They'd just get someone else in on the same scheme in the same way that private employers do. And, it's not a solution to unemployment. So councillors should not be part of it.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. I'll now put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried.
Can I have a division?
Yes, so there's a division being called. So all those who voted in favour of the motion, please raise your hands.
Gil?
Bullion. And all those against? All good? Thank you. Can I ask for a mover and a seconder to admit the urgent business report, DCS? Move Councillor Cameron.
My general business.
Oh, sorry, general business. I skipped general business. Goodness me, I'm so sorry. No general business tonight.
We could still add that and then come to it after that.
Oh, yes, we can add.
That's true, seeing it's already been moved. So it's been moved by Councillor Kavanagh. Somebody to second accepting the item of urgent business. Second, Councillor Ratnam. All those in favour?
No.
All those opposed? Declare that carried. We will now return to general business, which is what I intended to do all along. Councillor Bolton, do you have any general?
No, I don't.
Councillor Gillies.
I do have something. I will move a motion if that's all right, but I'm happy to be guided by governance after I've moved it, if that's all right. So I'm going to move that the Mayor write a letter of congratulations to Brunswick Secondary College Year 10 student Sasha Lakakis for being chosen as one of 3 essays in the state of Victoria to go into the National History Challenge. His essay was on leadership and a legacy Fidel Castro.
Is there a seconder?
Yes.
Yeah, seconded Councillor Bolton.
And I will say that the reason I'm moving this is because Sasha Lakakis happens to be my nephew, which is the only reason I found out about it, to be honest with you. But and so I probably want to be guided in terms of governance as to whether or not, because there is a resource in terms of writing to the council in regard to that. But I think it's it's a pretty great achievement. And
all right, well, we'll get the advice from James and then.
Through the Mayor. Councillor, from what you've described, we'll suggest you might have a conflict of interest through close association.
So should I leave and someone else can?
Sure.
I'll leave.
Thank you.
See you, everyone.
There's no material interest. It's a vague conflict of interest, but
Yeah.
Councillor Bolton, are you happy to move that on Councillor Gillies'
I'll
behalf?
give it a second.
Seconded Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Bolton, did you wish to speak to the motion? No, Councillor Kavanagh?
No, it's fine.
Is there any debate on this item? It's not an extensive use of my resources.
No, but I do think since it has been raised here, young Sasha's efforts should probably be acknowledged publicly, and I'm sure Councillor Gillies would have done so. So I think it is important to, as a council, acknowledge recipients of awards, particularly young recipients. I think it means a lot to them, and I got no doubt that young Sasha will be very thrilled to receive a letter from his mayor and his council. So I think it's a good thing to be doing. I would like to point out that it would be nice to develop a process where we are informed and can identify other recipients so we can actually send them likewise congratulatory letters into the future. It's only a small thing that this council can do, but I know it means so much to encourage them to pursue their future endeavours. And well done, Sasha, who's at Brunswick Secondary College.
All of the Sasha Lukakis.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. Is there any further debate? Yeah, Councillor Cameron.
Councillor Tapanos, he's right. It would be good to have some
Yes.
sort of ability to recognise these things. I know when you talk about letters, it's congratulations. As the mayor, you get to write like wedding anniversary letters and 50th wedding whatever. And I know how well they're always received. It's surprising how much lost the word, but how much people value that. To be honest, it's really lovely and it's a really nice part of the job. So I think you're right.
Yeah. And it's always such a great disappointment too when you come across somebody who doesn't realise that they need to proactively seek
Yes,
that
that's
out
right.
for their family member, because a lot of federal and state parliamentarians have access to that information on their database.
That's right.
Like their database can tell them, oh, there's somebody turning 100 in a couple of days' time. We don't have that. And so there have been a number of circumstances this year where somebody's come up to me after the fact and said, oh, my auntie turned 100 last month and it would have been really lovely to get a letter from you. And I just genuinely didn't know. And it's always really disappointing when that happens. So it'd be lovely if we could work out a better system around that. Any further debate? No, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I'll declare that carried. Can somebody tap on the door and let Councillor Gillies know she can come back in?
Can I just say I'm really proud though?
Yeah.
He may win the nationals yet. He's pretty clever. And may I just raise one point also from today's meeting, because it's general business, but it's not a motion. It's just that I just want to flag that given the TPP is going to the Senate and we don't know what will happen with that, we have many, many policies that could actually be very negatively impacted by the signing of the TPP if it transpires. So, and I was just sitting here today because the news came in that it's going to go to the Senate. I was sitting today listening to the council meeting thinking, oh my goodness, we've got so many really positive policies that could be very negatively impacted by the TPP, such as buying local, such as local jobs, such as fossil fuel strategy, anything that actually undermines any of the TPP country signatories' corporate interests could actually end up costing council. So we could be in a little bit of trouble. So let's cross our fingers and hope that the Senate are sensible.
Well, we'll take that as an item for noting. So we'll have it. We'll have it minuted by Councillor Gillies, her concern with the TPP going to the Senate. And I know that there's previously been motions moved at a council level to advocate against it. So possibly what can happen is in the next day or two I can write a further letter just reinforcing our opposition to that policy. Thank you, Councillor Gillies. Councillor Cavanagh? No? Councillor Ratnam?
I've got one general business item, and that is that Council receives a report about if it has previously used Transfuel Services as a contractor for any purpose and the implications of not using them for any council contracted work in future. Can you speak by the seconder?
Sure. Did you change that at all? Or, okay.
Can you say that again?
Did you change that?
Yes, that's the minute version.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
So that's seconded by Councillor Bolton. Councillor Ratnam?
Speaking of the TPP and the implications of some of these broad multilateral agreements on our ability to sort of have preferred providers. Many of you might know that Transfuel Services run Australia's offshore detention centres on Nauru and Manus Island. There's been significant public criticism of their management of these centres and their ethical integrity in being involved in this policy regime of offshore detention. There've also been reports, multiple reports of abuse and self-harm by people seeking asylum in those detention centres, and it sparked a Senate inquiry that found the conditions of these centres were not adequate or appropriate or safe for asylum seekers, and called for government to take action to close them down and find safer abode. Council has a well-established position of supporting people seeking asylum in Australia, and in keeping with this approach, I think it's prudent if we that we are aware and avoid supporting businesses that are involved in services that are part of causing this type of harm and suffering to people. And I'd just like to note that there are big organisations and sections of the community that are looking specifically at transfuel superannuation funds that are investing from their investments in these sort of companies, and that's part of the broader public advocacy and pressure for these sort of organisations and companies to look at their the ethics of their practice. So I think this motion essentially just calls for a report to look at whether we've had any involvement, and also what the implications are if we chose not to have any involvement, given some of that legislation that might impinge on that.
Thank you, Councillor Ratnam. I'm sorry, I've lost who the seconder was. It was seconded Councillor Bolton. Councillor Bolton, did you wish to speak?
I think I understand Council probably hasn't used transfer services, but I think it's worthwhile to look. Actually, if I hadn't seconded it, I would have added in Wilson Security as an amendment. Maybe
We'll start here, we'll get the report in.
Because I mean, the whole thing is an absolute abuse, and it's the centre of a High Court challenge today over the legality of the whole detention centre regime in Nauru. But certainly, you know, I think one part of the campaign is trying to put pressure and strip funding away from Transfield, with some superannuation services like Hester withdrawing their funding from or their investment in Transfield. So we absolutely shouldn't support them in any way. But anyway, we'll see.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Is there any debate on this item? I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Declare that carried.
Yeah, the division was voted for that.
Yes, certainly division has been called. So all those that vote in favour of the motion, please raise your hands.
I don't know much about it.
Yep, and all those against? Okay, great. Thank you. Anything further, Councillor Madam? Councillor Davidson?
No, nothing.
No? Nothing from me. Councillor Tapanos?
I do have one. It's about support to senior citizens groups. So basically, Council
Please just move the motion and then...
receive a report about senior citizens groups with the aim of further assisting them in the work they do. The report should include 1, what financial support is available compared to other municipalities; 2, what programs or services does Council provide, if any, free of charge to these groups; and 3, what are the possible outcomes to resolve parking difficulties for the organisers of the seniors groups during their meeting times; investigate possible permits that could be given to seniors groups, particularly in areas where parking is restricted.
Is there a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Tapanos.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors. Yeah, look, I've often wondered how we benchmark when we are talking about providing support to our senior citizens groups. And we do have a number of groups that operate in the municipality, and they do great work. And I know that many of them do utilise council facilities. There is a small grant based on their membership that is available. But I do wonder whether we have been keeping up to date with what's been going on in other municipalities, and doing a benchmarking exercise and seeing whether there's any innovative approaches that they've taken to provide services to them in a better and a more effective way is a valuable thing to be doing. And also having a look at the amount of investments that other municipalities put into these services, because they do amazing work, and they do meet so many of our council policies, whether it is social inclusion, whether it is health and wellbeing, whether it is active participation, community and civic engagement. There is so much work that really goes unnoticed. And I think quite often of many participants, when I do go as a councillor and my duty is to visit them, and I think that so many people that are here, if it wasn't for the seniors group, they would probably be at home, or God forbid at the pokies, or they certainly wouldn't be having the social interactions, sometimes with people from their own cultural background, sometimes people people would go that share a commonality around a particular activity or a particular interest that they have. So they do great work, and I know that there's been so many difficulties. And the last point there, point 3, is to address some of the difficulties, particularly around car parking when they use some of the facilities where car parking is at a premium. We find that they're not able to load and unload effectively, or certainly the organisers, who are just volunteers and they sometimes provide food at these catered at these meetings, have to drive around for a long period of time seeking to find a car park. So we don't offer parking permits to people who utilise our facilities, to people, external groups who lease our facilities. But I actually think that we should look at this, particularly for seniors, because they lease facilities on a weekly basis, most of them, and they are providing what is effectively, I would say, an essential service to the community, and the council should be supporting them by doing whatever possible to making sure that parking permits are available. So this motion originally started about parking permits, but I've broadened it out because I do think that information would be really useful to have, and benchmarking with other councils and seeing what is being provided to them would be would really inform future council decisions and future council budgets, because we do so many things really well that sometimes there are areas that we need to come back to and really focus on, and this could be one of those areas that we've just fallen behind in compared to our neighbours.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. Councillor Bolton, did you wish to add to that? No? Is there any debate on this item? I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Declare that carried. Anything further, Councillor Tapanos? No. Councillor Lenker-Thompson.
Yes, I have one general business item. The motion reads that Council resolves to endorse the Race to Town Hall event hosted by the Public Transport Users Association, PTUA. 2, to work with PTUA to find a suitable location at the Town Hall to welcome participants of the race. B, provide food and drinks for when participants arrive, possibly using donations from the Coburg Night Market food stalls, for example. And C, to work with PTUA to apply for a quick response grant to help cover costs of printing leaflets and etc. 3, to publicise this event at Council's stall at the Coburg Night Market, City News page and all social media platforms. And 4, encourage participants at the local Coburg Night Market to take public transport.
I know what Councillor Rob Thompson is going to say, and I think I probably agree with him. Councillor Thompson.
Point of order, this is requires funding and other resources. It can't really be a...
Unfortunately, this motion does require allocation of resources, both in terms of a location at Coburg Town Hall, food and drinks, regardless of whether they're donations, quick response grants, and publicising the event. Is it able to be deferred to the next... What's the date of the event?
They're still finalising, but they're thinking it's the second Friday of the Coburg Night Market. So
December. Is it possible to defer this and make it a notice of motion at the November meeting?
Well, I did send this through to Manager of Governance to see whether it was suitable for a general business item, and my response back was that it was okay to be sent. So that's why I've put it up.
Oh, okay.
And
CEO?
if there's further discussions of it.
I'll add some information and you can consider that. So I'll work my way up from point C. Apply for a quick response grant. That is an application for a grant. That is not an allocation of grant money. So I'm working my way through the thinking. Provide food and drinks, possibly using. Now we're working with the PTUA for them to do these things.
Right.
We're working with them to facilitate them. Yes, there is officer time, that is true. It depends on how big this becomes. Now, if we want to make it clearer in terms of this is the PTUA doing these things.
I think you need to say work with the PTUA so that they can.
Assisting. Well then, and I'm just making clear the basis on which we interpreted it.
Right.
If you want to make it crystal clear, you can add some more words. The way we're interpreting it is we are assisting another organisation to do this. We do this with our time quite frequently. If this is the work of a number of hours, that's okay. If we thought this was a much bigger task, then we'll need to come back and get an allocation of resources. So,
does publicising something in the city news page constitute a allocation of resources, given that we pay for that?
Well, we've done, many times we've included things in the city news page. We pay for that, and this is an inclusion of space. So, you could interpret it that way if you wish, but we have done this on request many times. It is not material.
Yeah. I don't disagree with the motion. I'm just making sure we get the governance right.
Can we adjourn to address the standing orders?
We can do that, or otherwise I would feel comfortable if the wording of point 2 was changed so that it said work with PTUA so that they may A, B and C, because as it currently reads, work with PTUA 2, when it says council resolves, just sounds like we would be allocating those things.
So it clarifies it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Councillor Rob Thompson and others who might have expressed concern, does that sort of clear things up a little bit, or would you prefer that we defer briefly to discuss this further?
Well, you don't just bring it up as a council item next.
Yeah, look, just to get the process right, 35(2) under general business, an item of general business can only be submitted under subclause 1 if the matter relates to business that calls for the presentation of a report to a subsequent meeting. I don't see a report.
There are other criteria.
I've read that.
Yeah. There's a range of criteria.
Not require the making of a decision, subsequent affect levels of council service, commit council to expenditure, establish or amend council policy, commit council to any contractual matters.
Councillor Tabernos, are you actually speaking, or are you just reading to yourself?
I was reading the standing orders.
He's reading it's a bedtime
Because
story.
we can't all wait while you're
It's very nice of
reading.
him.
If you'd like to read them to the rest of us, that's fine.
I'll pass them to the mayor, and the mayor can make a consideration.
My
based on
only
standing
concern is the point that says cannot require the making of a decision. I feel like it may require the making of a decision. I'm happy to overlook it. I feel like the manager of governance has said it's okay, and the majority of councillors are comfortable with it. Yes,
that was the whole reason why I opposed this change to our meeting procedure. But given that it's been interpreted very liberally to make numerous decisions, I think it'd be very inconsistent if we then said, no, we couldn't, move a motion tonight which does make a decision, especially given with the new wording proposed by the mayor. It would be very inconsistent because ever since we made that decision, which I pointed out the problems with such a silly motion, such a silly decision to, say that general business items couldn't make a decision. We've actually been making decisions the whole time since.
we've just discussed
so it'd be
that.
very
I agree with you,
inconsistent.
Councillor Bolton. Writing a letter is making a decision. We do it all the time. So I think that it's fine to accept. The CEO.
Excuse me, through the mayor, if I may. The local law tells you what disqualifies a GB item. According to those criteria, we did not disqualify this item. Okay, so it's not a permissive thing. It doesn't say if it meets this criteria, you may. It says if you meet this, if you hit one of these conditions, you may not. Okay, so you need to read it in that way. This does not hit any of those conditions. It is not knocked out for that purpose. This still meets that. You could say that any decision you make through your general business item is actually a decision. Absolutely, we're talking about material decisions that meet all the rest of those criteria. It is a different thing, so you need to read it that way.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Well, I'll allow the item. Councillor. Seconded, Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Thompson, did you wish to speak to it?
Thank you, councillors, and thank you, Councillor Kavanagh, for seconding it so I can speak to it. And it's good that we aired this event because we're wanting to get it as publicised as quickly and as proficiently as possible. So the fact that we've spent the past couple of minutes debating about it is good. And I'd just like to say that the Public Transport Users Association are advocating for better public transport for all users, and that this particular campaign that they're running is a new and a fun initiative that they're wanting to host, and they've already had one at Yarra City Council to the race to the Richmond Town Hall there, and it's about any participants who are coming from anywhere in the municipality or outside from their workplace, from their home, from schools, from wherever recreational facilities that they're at, that they use public transport or any means possible. If they need active transport with their feet or with their bike, then that's fine. And they race to the town hall as quickly as they can. And the first one there is awarded with a small token of congratulations. So, and they want the PTUA using the night market as a leveraging point, realising that it has become such a core, festival time for Coburg, and really wanting to work with council in leveraging off that particular night. And the see about the quick response grant is that they're wanting to really engage in that space as well, because they're a not-for-profit and run by volunteers as well. So
It's a disgrace.
encouraging all participants to use public transport, and council has long been an advocate for better public transport. So this is not in contradiction to anything that Moreland has stood for in the past.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Kavanagh.
I'm right, thanks.
Okay, is there any further debate on this item?
Maybe
Yes,
just
Councillor
add a little bit about the event. I mean, I think the Public Transport Users Association is wanting to work with a range of different organisations in Moreland, particularly schools, to get people exploring public transport options in the race to Town Hall. So I think they'll be working. I mean, it actually is it's actually a good idea to try and bring to people's minds what public transport is available, and also what public transport isn't available as well.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. If there's no further debate, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. Councillors, the time is 9:58. Can I please have a motion to extend the meeting to consider the remaining business item? Moved Councillor Kavanagh, seconded Councillor Davidson. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. DCS 8615, Preferred Development Outcomes for 4 to 10 Prospect Street, Pascoe Vale. Moved Councillor Kavanagh.
I'll move the urgent business item on page 1.
Oh, I'm so sorry. No, you're right. I didn't finish general business.
You've got a councillor on his feet.
Yes, we have. Sorry, I keep doing this with general business. Sorry. We'll consider this item and then we'll come back and see if you and... Yes, Councillor Kavanagh,
I
please.
move the recommendation on page 1 of the urgent business.
Thank you. Is there a seconder?
Yep.
Seconded Councillor Ratnam. Councillor Kavanagh.
No, I reserve my right to speak. Yep.
Thank you. Councillor Ratnam?
No.
No? Is there any debate on this item? No? I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Declare that carried. General business. Councillor Lenka Thompson, did you have anything further?
No.
Councillor Rob Thompson.
No, I don't have any.
Councillor Yildiz. Well, I'm glad you made me come back to it. I will note that there is no confidential business. Before we close the meeting, I'll just note that this is my last meeting as chair before the ceremonial meeting on the 26th of October. So thank you to councillors for being an excellent bunch to work with throughout the year, and for the most part, behaving themselves. No, it's been a really great year, and we'll speak further on the 26th of October. But thank you also to all of our directors and our CEO and governance staff and our communications team who attend all of these meetings and sit through us debating them until well past 10 at night a lot of the time. To our local journalists who always come and listen to us as well, and to members of the gallery and members at home who are watching it on live stream, who always put in so much time and interest into what's going on in their city. It's been a lot of fun. So I'm now happy to declare the meeting closed at 10 p.m.